All right, welcome everyone. Today we're jumping into this incredible story of transformation. It's a story that actually answers a question that's thousands of years old, a question about memory, devotion, and, well, destiny. So let's get right into it.
So it all starts with this one big question. The great sage Vyasa basically asks the celestial traveler Nārada, how is it possible? How can you remember a life you lived 1,000 ages ago? I mean, think about it. We're talking about after an entire universe has dissolved and a new one's been born. How could anyone remember that? Well, the story we're about to go through, that is Nārada's answer.
So where does a story like this even begin? You might think it starts in some grand celestial palace, right? Nope. It actually begins in the humblest of settings, in a life he lived ages and ages before anyone knew him as the great sage Nārada.
It all starts with a boy. And what's absolutely wild is his age when this whole journey really kicks off. He was just 5 years old.
Now this kid wasn't a prince or some kind of prodigy. He was just the only son of a maidservant. But his world, wow, it was profound. See, for a few months every year during the rainy season, his mom would serve this group of enlightened sages, and he'd help out. He served them with this pure, total devotion. And this simple act, it started to change him. By eating the leftovers from their plates, a sign of humility and respect, he felt his own heart becoming purified. And the whole time, he was just listening, soaking up all their stories about the divine like a sponge.
And then, one completely ordinary evening, a simple, everyday chore, his mother just went out to milk the cow. But that one moment, it became the pivot point for his entire existence. Everything was about to change, just like that. On the path, she was bitten by a serpent. And that was it. The boy's whole world just flipped upside down. His mother, the only real tie he had to that life, she was gone. Okay, but here's where things get really interesting. It's the boy's reaction. It's a totally radical way to look at tragedy. Instead of just being swallowed by grief, he saw it as a kind of special mercy from the Lord. He truly believed the universe was cutting his last earthly attachment so that he'd be free to go after a higher purpose. I mean, what an incredible perspective for a 5-year-old kid, right? So with that last tie to his old life completely severed, he was now utterly and totally alone. And he makes a decision right then and there that's going to define everything. He just started to walk. That's it. He just left. He turned his face towards the north and just started walking, heading straight into the great unknown, leaving behind the only world he had ever known. And you have to understand, this journey was immense. He walked through entire civilizations, past prosperous cities, rich farmlands, even mines. He saw the whole scope of the human world. But he just kept going, deeper and deeper, until he reached this great primeval forest. And the way it's described, it sounds truly terrifying, ghastly, frightening, and full of dreadful animals. This was the real, intimidating wilderness. It's right here, in this scary, lonely place, that the whole story really hits its climax. This is where all that devotion he'd been building up was about to be put to the ultimate test, and, as we'll see, rewarded. So he's completely exhausted, right? Physically, mentally, he's just worn out. He finds a river, and he bathes and drinks, and you can just imagine him feeling his strength coming back. And then, he spots a solitary peepal tree. He sits down beneath it, and what does he do? He does exactly what he saw those wise sages do all those months ago. He turns his mind inward and he begins to meditate. And then it happened. As he's meditating, focusing his mind with this intense feeling that's just overflowing from all that listening and longing, the divine form of the Lord, the one he'd only ever heard about in stories, it appeared. But not in front of his eyes. It appeared right there, inside his own heart.
This experience, it was just all-consuming. The text describes it as being immersed in an ocean of ecstasy. It was so profound that he literally lost all sense of himself, of the forest, of everything. He was just completely and utterly absorbed in this vision.
But that state of perfect bliss, well, it wasn't meant to last. Its sudden disappearance was incredibly painful. But that pain, it led to a new, and you could say, an even more profound revelation. Just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. Poof! And the boy, he's jolted out of his trance, and he feels a sharp, acute sense of loss. He's distressed, he's confused, he tries desperately to get it back, to see that beautiful form again. But nothing, he couldn't.
And this right here, it shows the massive shift that was about to happen. He's sitting there in total despair, probably feeling like he failed somehow. And in that moment, a voice speaks to him. He can't see who it is, but it's clear and it's full of compassion. And that one voice, it changed absolutely everything.
This is the crucial part, the promise. The voice basically tells him, hey, you didn't fail. That vision, it was a gift. It was just a little taste of the divine, meant to make your desire to reach me even stronger. It wasn't supposed to be a permanent thing, not in this life anyway. The real prize was the promise. You keep this devotion, and after this life is over, you will become my eternal associate.
So, armed with this absolutely unbreakable promise, the boy's life enters its final stage. He's not desperately searching for that vision anymore. Now, he's just patiently living out his days, and he turns the act of waiting itself into a form of worship.
And this timeline here, this just shows how that promise played out over vast cosmic time. So for the rest of that life, he just wandered the earth, totally content, without any greed, just chanting the divine names and remembering. Then, at the end of that age, his material body dissolved, and after the entire universe was dissolved and a new creation began, he was reborn. This time as the sage Nārada, and get this, with his memory totally intact. It was a gift, a form of grace.
And this is the whole culmination of his incredible journey. He becomes the celestial musician, the sage Nārada. His whole purpose now is to travel freely through all the worlds, playing his divine instrument, the veena, and singing the exact same stories of glory that he first heard when he was just a little boy. He gets to bring that experience, that vision he had, to everyone else through the power of his song. And so, that's the story. That is how Nārada remembered. And it leaves us with a really fascinating thought, doesn't it? You know, in our world, which is so obsessed with hustling and achieving and seeking things out, this ancient story suggests a completely different path. What if the greatest purpose isn't found by seeking, but by serving and by waiting? Waiting with profound patience and just trusting in a promise once it's been given. It's definitely something to think about.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into one of the oldest and I think one of the most profound origin stories of transformation. It's a tale that answers this ultimate question of, well, spiritual physics, really? How do you achieve a memory so powerful that it actually survives the destruction and recreation of the entire universe?
It's the ultimate continuity project, isn't it? I mean, what we have is a foundational text detailing this critical conversation between the great sage Vyasa, who's kind of struggling with his own purpose, and the divine traveler, Nārada, who seems to hold the secret to it all.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to extract the blueprint of Nārada's past life, before he was the eternal sage we all know. And Vyasa gives us the perfect framework. He asks three laser-focused questions that really guide the whole thing.
Precisely. Vyasa essentially asks about Nārada's previous existence. He says, 1, what did you do right after your spiritual teachers left? 2, how did you spend the rest of that life? And 3, and this is the big one, the real mystery, how did you shed your mortal body but keep your consciousness? Your specific memory, which time itself, the thing that dissolves everything, couldn't touch.
It's not just a memoir, it's a manual. And what's so fascinating is that the answer, it doesn't start with some high birth or, a privileged life. It starts in the most humble, unexpected place imaginable.
It really does. This whole narrative is like a detailed map of this completely unexpected spiritual journey. It proves that the deepest transformation can come from circumstance and devotion, not just perfect conditions.
So Nārada starts his story. He says he was just a 5-year-old kid living in a Brahmana household, completely naive, direction, place, time. None of it meant anything to him.
And his situation was so precarious. His mother was a simple maidservant. The text makes it really clear she was completely devoted to him, her only son.
Yeah.
But she was also helpless. She couldn't change their circumstances. So her attachment, which came from love, was also this powerful anchor. It kept him bound there.
That's a powerful knot to untie. And here's where the story just stakes. It pivots on this really shocking moment. His mother dies. Suddenly.
Yeah, she was out one night, milking a cow on a path, and she gets bitten by a snake. And the source material emphasizes this wasn't random. It says it was driven by time, by kala, an unstoppable force.
Okay, and this is the key psychological flip. Most people would see that as a crushing tragedy, but Nārada describes his reaction not as grief, but as divine grace. a gift.
That is the pivotal moment. To see the death of your only family member as anugraham, as grace, it means he instantly recognized that this event had just freed him. He cut every single worldly attachment in one go. And that's the answer to Vyasa's first question. What did he do? He set off walking north. His old life was just gone.
That is a brutal but also incredibly essential way to understand detachment. So he's off. A 5-year-old, alone, crossing these incredible landscapes. He talks about diverse countries, rich cities, poor villages, farms.
He paints this stunning picture, doesn't he? It's about the sheer scale of the journey. He mentions mountains with these vibrant minerals, forests where trees were broken by elephants,
Wow.
clear lakes filled with lotuses. It's this epic travelogue, and I think it's meant to emphasize his isolation. He's absorbing the entire world, all by himself.
And this journey ends in the most desolate setting you can imagine. A huge, frightening forest, infested with snakes, owls, jackals. Basically a terrifying place for anyone, let alone a child.
And he chooses that spot as his sanctuary. He finds a river, refreshes himself, sits under a papala tree, and just begins to meditate. And this is key. He meditates based on the knowledge he had heard from the sages who visited his mother. He's not making it up. He remembered and he applied.
And the result is immediate, just overwhelming. As his mind is conquered by devotion, tears are flowing, and then, slowly, the Lord appears inside his heart. He experiences this supreme bliss, goosebumps, like he's immersed in an ocean of joy.
The ultimate union, a direct experience. But, and this is what makes the story so powerful, what happens next?
Right.
The beautiful, sorrow-removing form vanishes instantly. And the distress is just as immediate as the bliss was.
So he tries to get it back.
Desperately, he tries to refocus to bring the vision back, but it's gone. And he's left anxious and completely unsatisfied.
Wait a second, so he achieves the absolute peak, this supreme bliss, and then the divine just yanks it away from him? That seems really harsh. Why even give him the vision if it was just going to be withdrawn?
And that's the question every seeker asks.
Right.
And this is where the divine counsel comes in. A voice gives him the context. As he's searching and grieving, this profound, deep, gentle voice speaks to him to calm him down.
And what's the message? What's the reality check?
The voice is very clear. It says, "You cannot see me again in this birth." It explains that the Lord is difficult to see for imperfect yogis, for those whose impurities, whose worldly attachments aren't fully ripened or purged yet.
So the problem wasn't his meditation technique, it was that he still had some residual stuff to burn away. Okay, but then why show him the vision at all? Isn't that just a purposeful tease?
It absolutely was. The voice is totally direct about it. The vision was shown once, and only to increase your desire for me. That's the mechanism. By giving you a glimpse of something infinitely beautiful, that intense longing, that kama for the divine, it begins to supersede and burn away all the other lower desires you have. The disappointment actually anchors the memory of the bliss, and it makes the pursuit non-negotiable from that point on.
That's a fascinating teaching tool, using temporary frustration to guarantee an eternal commitment. The memory of that brief vision is what secures his entire future.
Exactly. And this leads right to the answer for Vyasa's biggest question, how he kept his consciousness across cosmic cycles.
The ultimate promise.
Yes. Because of his service, his devotion was now rock solid. The Lord promised that after he gave up his mortal body, he would attain the Lord's own nature. And crucially, the Lord promises that Nārada's devotion and his memory, his specific consciousness, would never ever perish, not even during the dissolution of the entire universe.
So the memory isn't an accident or some latent skill, it's a specific cosmic insurance policy, and it's tied directly to that unshakable, desire-fueled devotion he established as a child.
It's the reward for proving his resolve, for continuing to meditate and serve even after the greatest prize was pulled away.
And that answers Vyasa's second question, how he spent the rest of his life. After this counsel, the Lord falls silent, and Nārada just wanders the earth, chanting, remembering, totally content, free from pride and envy, just waiting.
And when the time came, his old body, the one made of 5 elements, it just fell away. His past karma was extinguished, and he received a pure, divine form, a body fit for what was to come.
But the real test, the true test of eternal memory, it comes at the end of the cosmic cycle, the kalpa. Can you just explain the scale of what we're talking about here?
A kalpa is the lifetime of the universe. It's a period of thousands and thousands of ages. At the end of it, the whole material universe just dissolves. Everything gets withdrawn back into the source. This is the moment all other memories, all other forms are lost.
And what happened to Nārada during this great universal reset?
Well, at the end of that cycle, when the Lord is resting on the cosmic waters, Nārada, with his blessed memory, doesn't dissolve. Instead, he enters the Lord's breath. He merges back into the source, but his consciousness is perfectly preserved. It's like the ultimate memory backup.
So he merges back in only to emerge again.
Exactly. After 1,000 yuga period passes and creation starts up again, Nārada is reborn. He emerges from the Lord's life air along with the other great sages. He successfully crossed the finish line of the universe with his memory and devotion perfectly intact.
And because of that grace, he's now the divine traveler we know, roaming the three worlds, carrying his divine lute, the vice, singing the Lord's stories.
Perpetually fulfilling that mission.
Which brings us to the ultimate application of this whole story. Nārada says that when he sings, the Lord immediately appears in his heart, as if he's been summoned by the music. So the joy of singing, that act of service, is now his direct line to constant presence.
And that's the massive takeaway for you, for the listener. It's the shortcut. Nārada lived through the whole process, and now he gives the final instruction for anyone dealing with that mental suffering that comes from desire.
So what does it all mean? Nārada states very clearly that describing the Lord's activities, telling the stories, singing the deeds, that is the boat to get you across the dangerous ocean of existence.
He stresses that this active, joyous service is actually more effective for calming a soul tormented by lust and greed than even the most rigorous paths of yoga or silent meditation. The memory gets internalized through sharing it. It's not just about what you know, it's about what you celebrate.
That's the ultimate paradox. The secret to an eternal, unshakable memory isn't found by retreating into silence. It's achieved through active, joyous celebration and transmission of truth. Nārada's entire identity is that instrument he carries and the songs he sings.
Absolutely. And with that, the story says, Nārada departed, playing his vidya, rejoicing, fulfilling his purpose of delighting an afflicted world.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to explore. Nārada's journey to knowledge starts with structure, leads through this devastating isolation and silent meditation, but his eternal status that's secured through spontaneous joy and music. So if the greatest truths are meant to free the world from suffering, how much does the delivery method change everything? Does singing or art make eternal knowledge more accessible and more powerful than the most rigorous, solitary effort?